The Tampa Bay Buccaneers have clinched the NFC South and will host at least one playoff game following a 32-6 victory over the Carolina Panthers in Bank of America Stadium. We're going to dive into the recap right now. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome to the Locked On Bucs podcast, and thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listen or first watch every day, free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. I am James Yarko, flying solo on this episode with my co-host David Harrison. We'll be back later this week. You can check out everything he and I are doing over at BucsNation.com. Make sure you follow along on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at JYarko_Bucs, at DHarrison82, and at Bucs_Nation. It was a week later than we were all hoping, but the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have officially clinched the NFC South crown for the first time since 2007. They have officially clinched a playoff spot. Now they're dealing with fighting for playoff seeding between themselves, the Los Angeles Rams, who have taken over first place in the NFC West, and the Dallas Cowboys, who have not played at the time of this recording. But right now, the Buccaneers are sitting in the 4 seed, still a couple weeks left to go, still some very beatable opponents. One of them is the one that they just beat today in the Carolina Panthers, winning 32-6 on their home field. They also get to face the Jets. So you would think that the Buccaneers are going to be able to finish the season 13-4, but they have to overcome the Cowboys and the Rams in order to get that number 2 seed. Looks like Green Bay has things locked up. But given all the injuries for the Buccaneers, there was no Jason Pierre-Paul or Antoine Winfield Jr. or Levante David on the defensive side of the ball. No Mike Evans, no Chris Godwin, no Leonard Fournette. On the offensive side of the ball, some new people for the Buccaneers offense stepped up. I wouldn't call Ronald Jones new. He had a good game. Wouldn't call Antonio Brown new either, but he's new in the sense that he hasn't played in over 2 months due to injury as well as suspension. But Keyshawn Vaughn kicked things off with a 55-yard touchdown run. It was an incredible run. Cyril Grayson setting up the blocking down the field, and Cyril Grayson was a huge contributor to the team. Brady was looking for him often. He was making plays. He was getting first downs. He was doing a great job blocking downfield for the Bucs. So you have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers go for over 150 rushing yards as a team. Ronald Jones was 65 of those. Keyshawn Vaughn was 70 thanks to that 55-yard touchdown run. Antonio Brown over 100 yards in his first game back. But let's flip it to the defensive side of the ball. They were getting after both Sam Darnold and Cam Newton pretty regularly throughout this game. 7 sacks as a team. And Jordan Whitehead, in the absence of Antoine Winfield Jr., had an absolutely incredible game. It seemed like the announcers were mentioning him on every other offensive play by the Carolina Panthers. He was Johnny on the spot. He was making tackles. I still argue he should have gotten at least a half of a sack there in the first quarter. He came blitzing off the edge, pushed Cam Newton directly into the arms of William Golston, who ends up getting credit for the sack. It was an incredible defensive performance. Not only that, Shaquille Barrett, who had a sack in this game, giving him 10 on the season, he deflects the ball up in the air, and who was there to make the catch and get the interception? It was Jordan Whitehead. What an absolutely phenomenal game by the safety for the Buccaneers. But of course, it wouldn't be a Bucs game if we didn't have a little bit of bad news. Shaq Barrett left the game late in the second quarter with an injury. He was back on the first defensive series of the second half, but then left for the rest of the game. It has been called a mild MCL injury by Coach Bruce Arians, but they're going to be doing some testing and have more information on that injury on Monday. But in a game where you didn't have Jason Pierre-Paul, You had Joe Tryon-Shoyinka step up. Shaq Barrett was playing really well, and then he leaves the game. It was a hodgepodge group of characters for the Bucs defense. Kevin Minter got himself a sack in substitution for Levante David. But what was really puzzling was the way that the Carolina Panthers kept bouncing back and forth between quarterbacks. You had Sam Darnold come in after the Cam Newton interception. He completes a huge pass to a wide open receiver. They get to goal to go situation and immediately bring Cam Newton back in. The Panthers can't get in the end zone. They settle for a field goal. So it was kind of puzzling the way they did that. Sam Darnold taking almost every snap on the offensive side of the ball in the second half for the Carolina Panthers. So a dominant defensive performance by the Bucs, not allowing a touchdown for the second consecutive week. The difference is this one came in a win where they did get their hats and t-shirts in the locker room afterwards. We have plenty of voicemails that we are going to get to today. We're going to kick things off from a familiar voice, our friend Tyler from Boston.
What's up, boys? Tyler from Boston. If you love the Buccaneers, chances are you love defense. So I want a quick shout out to the no tutties given up in the last 2 games, 9 sacks, 2 interceptions defense. So Todd Bowles' unit is looking hot, and he can continue to dominate. I really hope he does. And on the whole, I mean, we're division champions, which is incredible to say. It's been a long time coming, and it helps to put the season in perspective through the ups and the downs. It's the best team in the South, and I'm sure Bucs Nation is very proud of that. Go Bucs.
If you haven't tried a Built Bar by now, then you are the one that is missing out. They say it's a protein bar, but it does not taste like one. You have to try one of these to believe it. Most protein bars are chalky, waxy, hard to choke down. A Built Bar is soft, covered in 100% real chocolate, and when you bite into it, you know you're eating something different. It's more of an experience and one that you're going to enjoy. In fact, you would honestly believe that you're eating a candy bar. Built Bars are low carb, low calorie, low fat, low sugar, high in protein, all the healthy benefits on top of just being delicious. There are tons of flavors. I got my stocking loaded up with some cookies and cream and some peanut butter brownie bars, but there's also mint brownie, coconut almond, salted caramel, cherry barcia. There are tons of flavors, something for everyone. Go to built.com, use promo code LOCKED15, and you're going to get 15% off your order. Again, promo code LOCKED15, LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. Segment 2 here of the Locked On Bucs podcast, and thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listen every day. Make sure to check out the Ultimate College Football Playoff Preview 2021, local experts, betting advice, and draft analysis. The most comprehensive college football playoff preview begins this Friday. You don't want to miss it, especially if you're not big into college football. You obviously love your Bucs because you're right here. Well, guess what? They're going to give you some names and some players to watch during this playoff that you might want to see join the Pewter and Red next season. We are going to kick things off in this segment with another voicemail from, I believe, a first-time caller. If you've called in before, I wasn't around or I don't remember, but this seemed like a new voice, and I'm excited to hear this one. So without further ado, here is Benny.
Merry Christmas, David and James. Hope each of you have had a wonderful, safe, and blessed Christmas holiday with your friends and family. Wow, finally, we are officially the NFC champs. I'm proud and excited entering the playoffs, and I just wanted to hear your thoughts on any concerns you may have with our offense moving forward. Our defense seems to be wreaking havoc and being back to its prowess. So for that, I'm not too concerned about, although I'm hoping that any injury with Shaquille Barrett is minor and it's not going to hinder him at all entering the playoff season. So I have a couple questions for you guys. First, again, any concerns between Brady and our weapons entering the playoffs? And my other question is something that I've been curious about all season long, and being a long time just sports enthusiasts in general with the Buccaneers, I've never seen so many injuries week in, week out. Is there something going on? Our strength and conditioning program. I mean, this is just unreal. We are constantly being depleted in key players, no less. So, again, those are my only two questions. This is Benny from LA. Proud of our boys. Great job. Merry Christmas. David, James, continue staying safe. And thank you again for being one of the best programs to watch for Buccaneer fans. And I appreciate all the work that you do, your dedication, your intelligence. Thank you so much. And Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Go Bucs.
Benny, thank you so much for the call and for the kind words. Hope you and your loved ones had a wonderful Christmas as well. And Benny, I'm going to level with you. I think you asked a couple of really good questions. We're going to dive into that a little bit in this segment. We're going to start with concerns over the offense. I don't really have any right now, and I'll tell you why. I realize that's kind of strange. They had a hard time getting in the end zone against the Carolina Panthers. The score was a blowout, but it was a lot of Ryan Suckup. It was a lot of failure inside the red zone. Look, this is the first game since they lost to the Saints, when they lost Chris Godwin, they lost Mike Evans, they lost Leonard Fournette. So you have these guys out there. Antonio Brown makes his return, makes a huge impact, 10 catches, over 100 yards. It was a big game for him. But you saw on that touchdown to Cameron Brate, he was wide open. I mean, nobody near him because Gronk was triple covered. The Panthers went in there with the game plan of Rob Gronkowski is not going to be their go-to guy. Force Brady to beat us with somebody else, with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin not out there, and Antonio Brown playing for the first time in over 2 months. Well, Brown held up his end of the deal, and Gronk, with his one catch, he had 23 yards, I believe, on it. He got open because Stephon Gilmore got injured on the play with a groin injury. You saw him go to the ground. He grabs his leg, and he was in very obvious pain. So this is the first time that Brady's been out there with a receiving core, essentially, of Antonio Brown, Cyril Grayson, Tyler Johnson. He still had his tight ends. He looked to OJ Howard a couple of times. Howard made some good catches. He had one first down that was called back because of offensive pass interference by Brown. It was a ticky-tack call. It was a little iffy. People on Twitter were not happy about it, but they're never happy about any penalties against the Bucs. But Brown did engage in grasping his defender to start blocking before Tom Brady had let go of the football. Letter of the law, that is the right call. It just kind of stunk. So you have Ronald Jones and Keyshawn Vaughn as the running back rotation. So these guys were trying to kind of figure out what they could do, what they were able to accomplish against a really good defense. I mean, you do have to tip your cap to the Panthers. They have one of the better defenses in the NFL. The Bucs put up nearly 400 yards against them. They did a really good job, but the Panthers defense has not been the problem this season. It's been the offensive side of the ball for them. So I think it was kind of a feeling out, learning period for the Bucs against the Panthers. Next week, they get the Jets. You hope to see Mike Evans return. You hope to see Le'Veon Bell, who came in at the very end of the game, get a little bit more incorporated, become an additional pass-catching threat out of the backfield that's going to help them get some chunk yards. So I'm not concerned about the offense. I thought this game was going to be a little touch and go for them as they kind of figured some things out on the fly against another defense, because trying to figure them out on the fly against the Saints defense, which is even better than Carolina's, was going to be a tall task. You're going to get Mike back. You're going to get Leonard back. They're going to be all right. You have a duo of Mike Evans and Antonio Brown. You're in good shape heading in to the postseason. As far as the injury problems, look, it's been brutal all year long. And I can't remember a year where the Buccaneers in particular have dealt with this many injuries, but you take a look at the Titans. The Titans have dealt with even more injuries than the Buccaneers have this year. They have a record for most players utilized during an NFL season ever. At the last time I saw the count, they had used over 90 different players on the field on Sundays since the beginning of the season. That's insane. I don't think it's an issue with the strength and conditioning. You take a look back at the Super Bowl run last year, and the Buccaneers got super, super lucky with injuries. The biggest one, obviously, was losing Vita Vea, but they got him back at the NFC Championship. He got to play in the Super Bowl. So he did return, but you didn't really lose any other big name guys. Gronk took a rough hit in the beginning of the year. Antonio Brown was dealing with that ankle and that Achilles injury. You have Shaq Barrett now with the knee injury. Again, doesn't sound like it's anything major, but at the same time, after the Saints game, they didn't think that Chris Godwin had torn his ACL. So more tests coming on that. Jason Pierre-Paul has been playing through injury the entire season. So losing him for this game, it wasn't great, but it wasn't a surprise either. You hope Antoine Winfield Jr. can bounce back from that foot injury, but it's just kind of the luck of the draw. When you play a high-speed, violent game like NFL football, you're going to deal with injuries. Sometimes you get lucky and you don't have a ton of them to deal with. Sometimes you get the other side of that coin and you have to deal with a lot of them. You have to overcome them, which the Buccaneers have done a really good job of doing. Didn't pan out for them against the Saints last week, dealing with all those injuries, but they continue to move forward, move ahead. They know they're making the playoffs. You might even see a situation where if they can't improve their seeding at all, you might see a lot of key players rested in week 18 against the Panthers at home. That way, they don't risk any more injury. Some of these guys that are banged up get an additional week of rest, and you could go into the playoffs facing off against whoever it is that you're going to face off against and be a little bit more healthy heading into that pivotal first round. Something to keep an eye on for sure, but I don't think it's anything in particular that the Buccaneers and their staff are doing wrong. I ultimately truly believe it just happens to be the luck of the draw, and injuries are a part of the game. It just seems like the Buccaneers are dealing with more than most other football teams. Again, Benny, really appreciate the phone call. It was fantastic. Please continue to call in. I will look forward to more of your questions because those were some fantastic ones. Something else that is fantastic is how much money I have taken from betonline.ag. I am winning week after week with these guys, and they're not stopping me. It's fantastic. So if you want an opportunity to take BetOnline for a little bit of a ride, you got to head over to their new and improved website, betonline.ag. It has you covered all through the holiday season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as we march towards the college football playoffs and the NFL playoffs. It remains your number one spot for all the sports action this season. Head to that new desktop or mobile website and sign up today to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit with promo code Locked On. From basketball, football, NHL, boxing, UFC, right down to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all of your favorite sports. So don't wait. Take advantage of that welcome bonus. BetOnline, where the game starts. Wrapping things up here on a Victory Monday edition of the Locked On Bucs podcast. James Yarko flying solo without my usual co-host David Harrison, but you can find us on Twitter at @JYarko_Bucs, at DHarrison82. I forgot to put my little banner up there on YouTube. So you got the Twitter handle. Yep, there it is, right there. We are going to wrap things up the way we normally do. David did not send in his play or player of the game. So I'm going to give you two players of the game. I'm going to give you one on offense and one on defense, but we got to hear from one more of our listeners before we dive into that. So let's hear a phone call from our good buddy, Adam.
Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Adam from Atlanta, Georgia. There is currently 14 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and I'm watching it. So I'm kind of thinking, right now we're decimated with injuries. The offense is just getting killed. But what I'm looking at right now is a defense that I think can go pretty far in the playoffs. And, if they get that kind of like swagger that, the game's on their shoulders, I think it could be really beneficial in the playoffs. And then once we get Evans and Fournette back, the defense playing with this chip on their shoulder, I mean, hey man, Super Bowl, baby. Go Bucks.
Adam, thank you very much for the phone call. And yeah, the last 2 weeks, the defense has played lights out. It is, again, reminiscent of the run they went on at the end of last year. The defense is getting very hot and playing some extremely good football. It hasn't been against the most potent of offenses, but you go back to that final stretch last year, and that wasn't against the most potent of offenses either. It was just enough for the Buccaneers defense to really start playing well as a collective unit. Then it didn't matter the level of the offense that they faced. They were able to really impose their will on everyone. So it's very encouraging to see that. But again, you want to get some of those injured guys back. You want to see Antoine Winfield Jr. on the field. You want to see Jason Pierre-Paul on the field. You want to make sure that Shaq Barrett is okay, and he's going to be back on the field. Again, might be a guy that you rest for the final 2 weeks of the regular season. Make sure that whatever that knee injury is heals up and he's ready to go for the playoff run. But let's kick things off with my play of the game, and there's only one choice, and it's Keyshawn Vaughn. David and I have not minced words when it comes to Keyshawn Vaughn, that we're disappointed in the output that he has when he's on the field. He still had some issues in this game, dropped some passes. He was very visibly upset when he dropped a swing pass from Tom Brady. He punched the ground, was very angry, but he got that scoring started for the Bucs with a 55-yard touchdown run. It was an absolute thing of beauty. Wasn't quite as pretty as Ronald Jones' long touchdown run against the Panthers last year, but it was enough to spark the offense and get them going. You love to see that out of a guy who has struggled, and maybe it's enough to really start to get him going a little bit, give him a little bit more confidence for those opportunities when he is on the field to be able to get the job done. As far as my players of the game, the 1A, I'm starting with the defensive side of the ball. It is absolutely Jordan Whitehead. In Winfield's absence, Jordan Whitehead played absolutely out of his mind. He was all over receivers. He was putting pressure on whoever the quarterback was. I still believe he should have had at least a half of a sack for shoving Cam Newton directly into the arms of William Golston, who finished the day with 2 sacks. It was an absolutely phenomenal performance. He was tipping passes. He got an interception, the only turnover of the game. It was a standout performance by Jordan Whitehead, who knew this defense needed somebody to step up and make some big plays, and he was right there to be the one to do it. You hope to see that continue into next week against the New York Jets. We'll have to wait and see. Maybe Antoine Winfield Jr. will return by then. But if you remember, before the Mike Edwards suspension, there were a lot of times that the Bucs had Winfield, Whitehead, and Edwards all on the field at the same time, with Edwards kind of slotting down as kind of the nickel corner, 3 big playmakers on the field all at the same time. You love to see things like that. So tip of the cap to Jordan Whitehead for an absolute baller of a performance. On the offensive side of the ball, I'm going to go with Antonio Brown. It was his first game back in 10 weeks, I believe it was. Finishes with 15 targets, 10 receptions, 101 yards. Didn't get into the end zone. There were a couple of plays where he and Brady weren't on the same page, but when they needed to move the sticks, when they needed a play to be made, Antonio Brown was, of course, the go-to guy without Evans and Godwin on the field for the Bucs, and he came through time and time and time again. It was a nice way for him to get back into the swing of things, get his body reacclimated to the NFL game, and I expect some really big things for him against the New York Jets next week. And not only did Antonio Brown have a really big game, he was doing it by and large against Stephon Gilmore, the Panthers' best corner. So that definitely gives you optimism for whatever defenses might throw at AB down the stretch and into the playoffs, that he's going to be a target that Tom Brady can rely on to make the tough catch, get the tough yardage, move the sticks, and keep drives alive. So there it is. Play of the game to Keyshawn Vaughn, player of the game to Jordan Whitehead, and player of the game to Antonio Brown for their performances. With that, I'm going to get out of here. We'll get into the big takeaways on tomorrow's episode. You can continue to send in your voicemails with your reactions or questions to 813-444-5841. As always, we appreciate you making Locked On Bucs your first listen or first watch every day. Now make your second listen Locked On Bets, your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets, hosted by your boy Q, with expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling. It is also free and available on all platforms. Check out everything I'm doing over at BucsNation.com. Make sure you're following along on Twitter at LockedOnBucs, at JYarko_Bucs, at DHarrison82, and at Bucs_Nation. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding Victory Monday. Stay safe, stay healthy, wash your hands, be good to one another. We thank you so much for joining us right here at Locked On Bucs.